But I don't see any difference in accountability. And I agree with you. I don't think any chief executive officer should be in a position to arbitrarily or randomly fire a director without justifiable cause. But that being said, I think the accountability is caught up with it isn't part of the appointment process, and I think that's where what we're looking at is how that position is appointed, how that position is vetted, and then how that position gets filled.
I agree with what Representative Duncan said.
Representative Higgins.
Thank you. That was going to be my point, that what I see is the difference here is the governor actually makes the nomination, and then there's the legislative process. But once that's said and done, and that individual takes on that position, it's the board that's going to be, they'll be reporting to. It's the board that will make decisions if in fact there's non-performance and what actions would need to take place. It won't be the governor, it won't be this committee here, and heaven forbid it won't be the legislature as a whole. So I see that as there's just one different process here, and that's who that individual is going to be, and they're going to be vetted, and then they're going to be vetted again and again and again. But once they get that job, I don't see any different changes in accountability.
I agree with Representative Higgins.
I just want to comment for a second because I'm hearing different things. The senator talked about the fact that he's concerned about discharge that could happen at any moment. I hear language that says, well, don't worry, there's a 6-year term. But then I hear additional language that says, well, don't worry, the board can fire him at any time for non-performance. So, not the governor, but the board can. So the purpose of a term, I'm just bringing it up for purposes of conversation. I'll say yay or nay. But if one is to adopt the concept of term like we do for judicial appointments, they don't report to a board of directors. Then we would also have to say that the board of directors would only function for matter of policy and have no jurisdiction over the suitability and continued employment of the director, because the director would be appointed for a specific set of term years. So I'm just saying, when we get to a place that we want to make a motion, to my thinking, if you're going to give this individual protection by assigning a term, then we also need to be clear that the board of directors is for purposes of policy. It has nothing to do with the continued employment of that individual. At some point, the appointee would return to the legislature for renewal of that appointment or not. Representative, I cut off Representative Beavers.
You brought up something a few minutes ago, Chairman, that about the definition of a trust being different from all these other quasi-organizations or agencies. And I'm wondering if we don't need a legal opinion as to whether or not we can even do this, what we're discussing now, with a trust, when it has its own board and rules as it does right now. I'm asking you because you happen to be a lawyer.
I'm not a trust attorney, so no. I'm not going to, and it's a complicated area of the law. I'm not going to venture an opinion. Deidre could supply us with an opinion if it would be helpful. I'm simply suggesting that the nature of a trust can be distinguished from the nature of all other agencies that the proponents are advancing and saying, see, it's just the same. See, this is just the same. I think the understanding of a trust at its core, it's designed to make sure there's no interference and that the decisions made within the walls of the trust are independent. That's the only thing I offer. The fact that we may or may not consider a political appointment process to put the chief executive officer in place of the trust is a policy decision. But it does affect the way we look at a trust. That's all I'm offering at this time. Representative Shannon.
Could someone on the committee help me to understand, what is this a comparison to? Is this like the Maine Housing Authority? Is this like the Maine Turnpike Authority? What this relationship, how is this how is this process described by something that already exists?
Representative Fredette, did you want to answer? Representative Dunphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I proposed was the same setup as FAME, Finance Authority of Maine, the Public Utilities Commission, and the POA, the Public Advocate's Office. So I guess I'm sort of envisioning at this point that it's done like that. That the recommendation is made by the governor, or if it had to be the governor and the sitting board of efficiency main trust. And then vetted and then approved by the Senate.
Okay, for the sake of further discussion, I appreciate that. I'm not really familiar with those entities. I'm familiar with Maine Housing Authority. Is that the same thing? So when Dale McCormick was appointed, whenever she was appointed, she had a certain amount of terms. She went through some governor, she went to another governor. There was a board that was appointed by governors, and that didn't end so well. For her, for other people, one would say, yeah, that was fine. But I'm just saying, am I doing an apples-to-apples comparison in that approach?
Representative Dunphy, do you want to answer?
I'll answer with what limited knowledge I have. No, this is a bit different. I think this appointment is a bit different, and Deirdre can probably correct me if I'm wrong. But I would agree with you that it didn't, or it didn't end up so well for any of us. And in reference to your comment about the termination, and I think when I was talking termination, I was speaking very specifically about justifiable cause for termination. There does have to be some kind of oversight, and that oversight should come from the board. But if you look at some other agencies, Maine Turnpike Authority is a good example. The oversight failed there somehow for about 20 years. So I think we need to make sure that and Mr. Stoddard, I don't want you to take this in any, I got the utmost faith in you, but you may not be here forever. That at some point there may need to be oversight. So I don't think we should eliminate that simply because for any reason. I don't think we should eliminate that. Some kind of additional government oversight when you're talking a $70 million budget, which happens to be twice that of IF&W, which goes through a pretty defined vetting process.
Representative Higgins.
I think we need to clarify. There's part A is who gets nominated, who gets vetted, who gets nominated, what's the process of confirming, and then that person starts day one. So we got part A. How do we get there? Who's the individual? Who's involved? Who gets to approve? Then part B is day one of the job and thereafter. And oversight. Well, this bill doesn't give the governor oversight. This bill gives the board, who that individual reports to, Mr. Stoddard in this case, he has a board he reports to. They are responsible for the oversight. And then I guess the third piece is, so what if that oversight indicates we ought to have a change in leadership? Who initiates that? This bill does not give the governor the authority to initiate that. He may be loud, but it doesn't give him the authority. And sometimes we need to recognize the difference. So it's the board that would be looking at what are the causes for wishing to see a change in leadership. And they would base that upon information that you and I are not going to have, because we're into personnel issues at that particular point. So they would make that determination at that point. And so I think there are very clear parameters here, but the big question is who gets to suggest, nominate who that individual is going to be, and then there are multiple vetting processes along that. Now, to the question of should a new person be nominated, asking the current board to work with whatever governor to come up with who the candidate should be will take many days longer than we're debating this issue. I think we need to keep those processes very, very clear for whoever's in the executive office. And I think this is a very clear process. And once the nomination's made and the approval, we're back to business as normal. Thank you.
Thank you for that outline, Representative Higgins, but it assumes agreement on the process. It is very clear if you agree with it. I'm raising questions about preserving the independence. I've heard the senator speak about the possible removal of the individual, and I'm simply saying protection and independence has to be designed. And when you design that, you change the nature of the board of directors. It's as simple as that. You can't tell somebody they're getting a 6-year term, but on any given day, the board can decide we can vacate that term. If you give somebody protection, which I've heard some of us say we would do that, then the only way the person comes out is by impeachment. They're protected. I mean, that's how you preserve an appointee for a course of terms. Representative O'Connor.
Thank you. Now, maybe, I didn't see in here a 6-year term. Was this new?
No,
That was what you proposed. And as far as this is concerned, I'm comfortable with this the whole way that it is, but maybe to make this a little bit more palatable and to leave the board in full control, the board will appoint their director for, I mean, you can't go wrong with a 2-year appointment, just like with the legislature. You could turn that over. 6 years is a long time, and that, or even.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Okay, my thought actually is to take this board and just have them consult with, the board will make all the decisions with a consultation. They'll make the nomination, but they'll consult with the governor on this, get a yay or nay, and then go forward with the process. Just so that the governor, whoever that may be, we're only going to have Governor LePage for 3 more years unless some weird thing happens.
Can I just, maybe the makeup of the board might be helpful a little bit to the discussion to understand who's on the board. So the board now, as it's written in statute, consists of the director of the governor's energy office, the director of the Maine State Housing Authority, and 7 members appointed by the governor, reviewed by the Joint Standing Committee of the Legislature having jurisdiction over energy matters, and approved by the Senate. And then it goes on further to say among those 7 members, people have to have certain qualifications, that they represent interests of commercial energy consumers, industrial energy consumers, small business energy consumers. It goes on and on and on. But the board itself is made up of people from, it could be different governor's office, I suppose, because they serve as 3-year terms, but just it might be helpful to understand the board, what's that made of, what's that comprised of.
Representative O'Connor.
Thank you. So, the board already has governor's appointees on it. So, I think we could probably beat this around forever. I would make a motion that we ought to pass this legislation, as it is. And, sorry, I like it and I think it's good.
You don't have to apologize for your thinking. You should never have to apologize for your thinking.
Tell my husband that.
I don't. Yeah. If you wanted to appear in the horseshoe, I'll be happy to ask him any kind of question.
Can I go home?
All right. So what's your motion? Clearly, no.
My motion is ought to pass. And I think, hold on, but don't I need to say as amended because I would like to take the and out?
What?
Sorry.
I can't respond at this. You could make a motion saying ought to pass, striking all language in reference to the word and, if you'd like.
I would like.
Coach Belichick. All right, so there's a motion on the floor. On to pass as proposed, striking all language in reference to the word and. Representative Beavers.
I just would like to remind people that a previous legislature had decided that this trust should not be politicized by having the governor's interference regardless of who it is. And it was formed under a different governor than we currently have. And they didn't want him to have it either. So I don't see any need to change this whatsoever under the conditions that are listed here. So I will not be able to support it.
Representative Higgins.
Well, certainly respect people's difference of opinions on this, but having worked for boards, in fact an 18-member board, the good thing is most of them are my former students, but or the bad thing, whichever. But having worked for boards, interference is when a board member calls at 8 o'clock in the morning and says, you know, the bus was going a little fast out on Route 50. That's interference. Or interference is at the last moment after we've spent months of working on a budget, somebody wants to amend an item by $250. To me, that's interference. It's the day-to-day operation is interference. I don't think we're talking about changing the day-to-day operation, day-to-day responsibilities, day-to-day accountability one bit here. Where the governor, well, I guess I shouldn't say that the governor wouldn't pick up the phone, but the governor should not be picking up the phone and calling the director of Efficiency Trust and saying, I've got a question and I want X, Y, and Z done. There's a board that the director of reports to, and they have that full responsibility to manage, help assist, manage, and oversight. Hopefully they're not calling every day either, but it'd be more appropriate if they did than certainly the governor. So I only see the governor having one very discrete role in this. The governor, whoever it is, whoever we have for governor, says, this is a really important position. I think it's important to try to get the very best person there. They vet the individual, and that individual is going to come through a very comprehensive process. The same process that we use to approve a PUC commissioner, which we're going to get a second shot at. The same process by which people get on the Efficiency Maine Board of Directors that are going to be overseeing this. The governor gets to suggest who those people are. If we don't think the governor should have any role, then maybe we should change the law and not have him appoint those people. He is having a role right now. And I think that's appropriate for this governor or any other governor. And I think we should move away from what the governor might do or not do. The governor will not have the authority to remove any Efficiency Maine director now or in the future. That's the board's responsibility. So, in terms of terms, it's not unusual to have a term of, I'm not sure, 6 years, but not unusual to have a term of 4 years by which people are renominated for that position. It could be on the advice of the Efficiency Maine Board, make a recommendation to the governor that we'd like to see this individual. But at that point, it'd be the governor to make that decision. And we have to trust that our chief executive is going to make informed decisions. We cannot come at this thinking our chief executive is out to do people in every single day. Now, I have my differences with him, as everybody in this room has. There are no exceptions. Nobody's excluded from that, including Mr. Furtherance, who's smiling but won't admit it. But we're talking future direction, not just today. So I don't see that we create any interference or do any disservice or any harm to Efficiency Maine. I think, in fact, that we are going to ensure that in the future, when Mr. Stoddard is not here, that we have a process that will provide a top quality candidate that will be thoroughly vetted. We should not wait until that day arrives. We should do it now. Because in my opinion, it's the right thing to do at this very moment. I would encourage members of this HUSU to vote affirmatively.
Representative Shan, you withdrawn your question. Representative Beavers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another thing that this removes is the requirement that the Director of Efficiency Main Trust have demonstrated experience in the planning, design, or delivery of energy efficiency programs or the management of organizations that plan, design, or deliver those programs. That defines a good portion of the job, and how you could remove that, and that's currently in the current bill. Again, that's another reason I can't support this as is.
Representative Dunphy.
I agree with Representative Beavers. I can't, that's like hiring a heavy equipment operator that doesn't have a license. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So I can't support the bill with that still in there. But I also would like to say that from my perspective, I'm not willing to cut my nose off to spite my face, and I think Representative Fredette's bill is a good bill with a little bit of tweaking. I think it's a really good bill with a little bit of tweaking, and I think it does provide another layer of accountability, and I'm all about accountability. I got no problem with that, but I think we need to look perhaps pragmatically at does this have any. It's about getting it through the House and through the Senate and not being vetoed. I mean, let's call it what it is. You know, we can work our backsides off here and come up with the absolute best thing since sliced bread, but it's got to meet the governor's approval, it's got to meet the Senate's approval, and it's got to meet the House approval. So just keep that in mind. And I don't know, I guess I don't even know what that means, except it's incredibly frustrating. So I'd love to hear some comments on that portion of what we're looking at.
Well, the chair would just note as a point of information, the current motion makes no reference to term of appointment for the director. The chair will also, no, it's not, but Representative Higgins was discussing language surrounding term of appointment. I'm just making sure the committee's clear that Representative O'Connor's motion simply promotes the bill as presented, striking out all language other than references to the word "and." Chair would also make just an observation. As much as we debated the Commissioner of Energy, it's amazing. We spent so much time in language saying everything is just perfectly okay with the current director. There's been no, other than the fact his budget has grown, there's been nothing suggesting there's been poor performance that required intervention. I haven't heard any problem articulated, and as much as some of you have tried to allay our fears about the executive branch, then we're hearing the executive branch is poised to veto our decision. So, I mean, you know what I'm trying to